no matter how successful you think you are, or how accomplished you think you are in any kind of personal endeavor, there's always someone a little better. There's someone a little stronger, a little faster, richer, and so you're never really there because there's always an
Always an
That's
Everywhere
right.
you go, somebody has done it better than you. Welcome to On the Verge.
On the Verge, man.
Daniel Stark's first ever podcast.
Episode 1, baby.
Episode 1, where ordinary people get extraordinary results. That's what this podcast is about. It's about interviewing entrepreneurs, business owners. We'll talk about everything that helps us be successful, that helps other people in the community be successful. But, a lot of podcasts that I listen to and watch are these massively successful people.
So what are we doing here?
yeah, right. What are we doing here? Yeah, because we're ordinary people, but we have experienced some success. But one thing that you and I have said we've been law partners business partners for 24 years.
Yeah. December was 24 years.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I don't know.
How is it that we still look so incredibly young?
Well,
that's the hard. I know people watching, people listening. They're like, okay, those guys sound like they could have been law partners for 24 years. When they look at us, like, that's impossible, man. Those guys look 30.
Dude. Okay. I don't know if you're being serious or what, because I'm looking at the gray in your beard and the lack of hair on your head.
Well,
And I'm thinking, no, you turned 50 this year.
I did. I turned 50 in December, and you sir, turned 50 coming up pretty quick, right?
Makes you think about things, right?
Yeah. Happy birthday.
So, man, let's talk about On the Verge. Why, we since the very beginning we talked about On the Verge. I don't know where exactly it came from.
Oh, I remember.
Do you? All right, tell me.
I remember. We were in an office share in Grapevine, Texas, and at that time, really, what we could afford was 2 offices with barely enough room for our desks. I literally had to turn sideways to get past my desk so I could get behind it to sit down. You remember that?
I do.
And I can remember a day when the one file drawer in my desk was about full of client files.
Right.
We were at the point where when we signed up one more case, we were going to have to buy a filing cabinet. And I can remember saying, Danny, we are on the verge, man. We are about to explode out of our desks and become a legitimate bona fide law firm.
When these drawers are full,
that's right.
We'll be there, right?
That's right.
That's what it meant. We were on the verge. At that moment in time, on the verge meant when those file drawers were full.
That's right.
We had made it.
When we are so big that we actually have to buy a filing cabinet, we're bona fide.
That's right. So speaking about files, at that time it was really hard to get clients. I know I looked like I was about 12 when we started.
I hope that the producers of the show today can put in some pictures of some of those early phone book ads. I don't know that you even looked 12.
Somehow people hired us.
That's right.
I can remember even after that, like there was a time when it was like, man, when we have 100 clients, then all of a sudden that was on the verge.
That's right.
But through 24 years, we've never not been on the verge. Like we get there, right? That file drawer got full. We did get to 100 clients. We got to 2,000 clients and beyond. But we're always saying to each other, man, we're on the verge.
We're on the verge. And now I don't know if but I don't think it's become a punchline. I don't think it's a joke. It's just a mentality of pleased but not satisfied.
Absolutely.
We've always got opportunities for personal and professional growth. We've got opportunities for our businesses to grow, for our skills to grow, get better results for our clients. And so while it's hard to say it now without chuckling a little bit because we've been on the verge for 24 years, but man, I do. I genuinely feel like, Danny, we're on the verge.
We're on the verge. You called me, let's see, it was the night before last, and you were like, man, Danny, we just got a $5.5 million resolution on a case. $5.5 million.
Oh yeah,
that's a massive case, right? It's
well, to put it in perspective, that case probably exceeds the results that we secured in the first 4 to 5 years of the firm combined.
Right.
So
that's a big case. I mean, no, I don't care what law firm you're in when you have a $5.5 million case. That's a big case. Now, we've had multiple cases much larger than that. And
Sure.
every year I'm always surprised and just feel honored and blessed when we have these multitudes of big cases. This year it's March. I think we've had 3 over $1 million this year, including that one. And so I'm like, man, we're on the verge.
We're on the verge.
We're on the verge.
That's right.
It's just this always. And I like you said, pleased but not satisfied. There was a book, I can't remember who wrote it, but it was titled that, Pleased but Not Satisfied. And I don't want that to come across as we don't appreciate and celebrate the wins.
Sure.
It's just that you have that win and then you're like, how can we do it better?
Yeah, and it's like you've heard lots of entrepreneurs talk about, if you're not growing, you're dying. And it's just this mentality of, and I don't know for me if it's somewhat of a fear-based mentality, but I just feel like if I stop trying to get better, if we stop trying to grow, if we stop trying to learn and develop our skills, then man, we're gonna quickly become irrelevant.
Right.
Complacency, man, it's the enemy of greatness, and so yeah, we're on the verge. I want to stay on the verge.
When I've talked to people about this, I love entrepreneurship, and being in the entrepreneurs organization and being the president of that organization for a while. I've had here in College Station, I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and if I talk to somebody about on the verge, and they'll be like, on the verge, like you're already successful, but I don't feel that way. Right? Because there's always a way we can do this a little better.
Yeah. It's hard to say you're there. I remember, our pastor Will one time did a sermon on the Verge. I don't know if you remember this.
Man, I was thinking about this last night because I knew we were going to talk about On the Verge today. Let's talk about Verge.
Yeah, it's no matter how successful you think you are, or how accomplished you think you are in any kind of personal endeavor, whether it's fitness or if I love fishing, there's always someone a little better. There's someone a little stronger, a little faster, richer, and so it's, are you ever there? Not that we need to have a keeping up with the Joneses mentality, because trying to be somebody else, that's not a recipe for a happy life.
Sure.
But the idea that you're never really there, because there's always an
Always an
That's
Everywhere
right.
you go, somebody has done it better than you.
Yeah, which makes this podcast, frankly, feel a little weird to me, because it's hard to believe people want to hear from us, because
They may not. They may not. I think, this is the first one. Yeah.
Christy and Julianne will
They
listen.
might listen. Yeah, I think that there's always an opportunity to get better. Ever since I was little, I love working on cars with my neighbor, and I think the interest in that to me was always just tweaking that car just a little bit to make it a little better. And then when we get into business, it's just like, how can we make this business a little better? And now, we're so focused on, telling our clients stories, and that has pushed us to a whole nother level where we've learned that, hey, the sky's the limit on these values with these cases. Because when you tell their story, their unique story,
Listen,
you don't know.
I can't wait for that podcast. But yeah, the idea that we can continue to develop and grow in a way that is personally fulfilling, but also helps us, achieve our purpose of keeping our clients from getting screwed by big insurance companies. It's just an honor and a joy and a privilege. And so getting to talk about it in this podcast and hopefully helping other people, continue their journeys to grow, to adopt that on the verge mentality. What a fun thing.
I want to talk about your personal life a little bit, and about being on the verge in your personal life, because it bleeds over outside the business of law. I know for you, I know it does for me. So,
sure.
I mean, for example, right? You at some point, I don't know, this was 5 or 6 years ago. I remember you saying, "Man, I'm going to run an Ironman."
Oh gosh,
or not run. I guess you're going to
participate. It's part of. There's running involved. Running. Yeah, sure.
So there, it's like, why would you do that?
Well,
that seems to be an on the verge kind of mentality thing. You're going to take it to the extreme.
Yeah, it's kind of a funny story. I actually was invited to do a little sprint triathlon by a gentleman we were working with at the time, and I did that, and it was kind of fun. And I thought, I might as well do an Ironman. And this is no joke. Part of the reason is as you can imagine, my last name's Stark. Dude, every time I check into a hotel, every time I make a restaurant reservation, the Game of Thrones has screwed this up a little bit, but before Game of Thrones, everybody was always like, oh, Iron Man.
Iron Man, yeah.
And so literally that planted this small seed in the back of my head that, one day I might decide to do an Ironman race. And so once I did the triathlon and realized that I enjoyed the training associated with these endurance events, I thought, man, let's do it. If I could do a sprint triathlon, then surely the next easiest thing is an Ironman. Now, there's a lot of steps between there that I skipped. But yeah, pushing my body to the absolute limit in an Ironman race was definitely certainly from a physical endeavor standpoint, it's the most on the verge thing I've done.
Well, you've done it a couple of times, but I think that's just a good example of, hey, you got into something. You found an interest in something through somebody else, which is how a lot of things come in our lives.
That's right.
And then you decided, hey, I'm gonna do this better and better and better. And then you ultimately ran that Ironman. And I remember you performing really well in that. And I
did better than I thought I was going to. 12 hours and 12 minutes is how long it took me.
You were pretty much an old man at that point.
What?
I mean, you were. You were so beyond your prime. And you still,
oh man,
physically. Come on, man.
I appreciate your effort to keep me humble. Yeah, this was 2018, so 6 years ago.
Time flies.
6 years ago, yeah.
Yeah. So there are other things. I mean, we have various passions. I know your passion is bass fishing. I also don't know anybody that pushes bass fishing to the verge like Jonathan Stark does. Whether it's your boats, like your gear, the organization of your gear, the passion that you have on the water. I know we did a client story with Justin Weiler about that. I think that showed a lot of passion.
Justin and I are actually going fishing again this Friday coming up. That's developed a cool friendship through all that.
Tell me what it is about bass fishing that makes you continue to push the limits, because I've watched you. I've known you for a long time. And I've watched you go through, just us bass fishing in Lubbock on your pretty junky boat.
Hey, that thing was nice at the time.
Yeah, it was what we could afford. And then all the way to starting to do some real tournament fishing. And then now you're in like some pretty legit tournament fishing. You got third place in Conroe a couple of weeks ago. So, I mean, tell me about that. What makes you push that to the verge?
Man, this could be an entire podcast talking about bass fishing.
I might have just opened up a big can of worms.
Yeah, we might derail the whole thing now. But I'll tell you as simply as I can try to tell you. For me, bass fishing is such an incredible sport, because to be good at it, you have to be 100% focused on what's happening underneath the water. And so, what your bait, what kind of cover are you coming into contact with? Is it rocks where you would expect crawdads to live? Is it stumps where you might expect bluegill to be spawning around? Or is it just out in open water where the shad live? So it's something that requires so much focus that you can't really be worried about challenges at work. When you're on the water, all of that goes away just for those few hours that you get to spend chasing this little green fish. And the beautiful thing about it is you can never master it. You can never perfect bass fishing because it is always changing, whether it's the gear and the technique that's changing. There's new lures, new methods to learn. Yeah. The electronics are evolving at a rate at which you can never master them. And it's just, I don't know, there's just something about the meticulousness and the detail-oriented nature of bass fishing that is it's just intoxicating to me. I love it.
Well, I just love how, this thing on the verge, like you said, it's not something it's not a tagline. It's not nothing. It's just something you and I have said. And we've just started to realize, I think, through our marketing team saying, hey, you guys, y'all are a little crazy. You guys tell us more about all that. And then that kind of brought up this whole on the verge concept. And hey, let's create a podcast about on the verge, about, how we think and how other business people think. I mean, so I just thought bass fishing was a good example. When you say this about it helps you completely take your mind off a thing. For me, that's, I have a passion for flying. So it's real similar in that. And,
you better be 100% focused.
You better. Yeah. You could mess some stuff up. But I love that too about it. It's just, it's constantly evolving. The technology gets better and better. The skill set that you're always learning, right? And you unfortunately, you learn from your mistakes a lot of times. You just try to make sure you don't make a really big mistake.
Sure.
So that could be unfortunate.
I admire your love of flying. I took some lessons, and it just wasn't for me.
Yeah,
I like riding.
Yeah,
I'm a much better passenger than a pilot.
Of course. Yeah, that's not a bad way to go either. You and I met at Texas A&M University at a recruiting event for Texas Tech Law School, and that's the first time I'd ever met you. But you mentioned bass fishing, so I knew we had a commonality. I said, I think I'll like that guy, and then we both ended up going to Texas Tech. And
we got to tell people in case there's Aggies listening and they're trying to understand, how did these two Aggies go to Texas Tech and not Texas A&M Law School? At the time, Texas A&M didn't have a law school.
They didn't have a law school. That's right.
We called Texas Tech, we called it A&M West because Texas A&M was the most represented undergraduate school there at Tech Law. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't know that.
More Aggies than any other university there.
They really recruited the Aggies.
That's right.
They did. Right. Well, then we went to, the first day at law school, it's quite large group of people in a big room.
You sure you want to tell this story?
Yeah, I'm going to tell this story. And because I didn't know Jonathan Stark. I knew of you because of the recruiting event. So I think we met just kind of in passing. But I remembered you. And then at the big orientation, there's the gunner. Right. I'm not going to name any names, but every law school class has a gunner.
That's right.
That one that wants to be the smartest in the room. Typically they're not, but they're gonna at least make the effort to show that they are. They believe they are.
That's right.
They believe they are. So the gunner is talking about email and getting email. And, this was the year, 1998?
This would have been 97.
Right? 97.
No, this would have been the fall of 97.
And
email was brand new.
Email was kind of, it was, I know it was around, but it wasn't like just everywhere. It wasn't like a phone in your pocket at the time, you know?
No.
And so, but you had to have an email. And so that was one of the first tasks. So I went and got my email that day. I went to the computer services office and got it. And I knew that they closed at 4 because I was there.
Mm-hmm.
And so with this guy, he gets up and he's talking about his email. Oh, I got to get my email. He's talking about how brilliant he is about emails, but he hadn't gotten his yet, right?
Yeah, yep.
And out of maybe 300 people, Jonathan Stark stands up and says, "Hey, if you go at 4 p.m., there's no lines." And I thought, I'm either going to really like that guy or he's a total a-hole.
Well, maybe sometimes both. Depends on the day.
So anyway, that was my introduction to Jonathan. And I really knew, actually, at that time. I said, I'm going to like this guy. And so
I feel bad. If he's listening, he knows who he is. Sorry, buddy. I led you astray on the first day.
It was funny. It was funny. So, yeah, going from there, tell me, what your recollection is, because we had some good times in law school. Law school was a lot easier for you than it was for me.
Well, I don't know about all that, but I enjoyed more the social activities of law school. I was really never a great student in that I didn't love to study, and I didn't probably take it as seriously as I should all the time. I feel fortunate that I can remember anything for a short period of time. And so, test taking is something that I've always just been naturally good at. And I think it gave me a little bit of an advantage. But, in law school, you've got a large group of, young budding professionals that frankly take themselves pretty seriously.
Yeah.
And you weren't like that, You were the only guy I knew in law school that liked to hunt, that liked to fish, that liked to work on 4-wheel drive trucks and maybe go get stuck in the mud every now and then just for fun.
Just for fun, yeah.
And so, man, that was just such a relief for me to have a friend like you in law school. And so, I remember that quickly after our first year of law school, we were working at competing law firms that were catty corner from each other there in downtown Lubbock. And you were working in a law firm that focused on a high volume of pre-litigation settlements, so cases that were able to get resolved without having to file a lawsuit. The law firm I worked at, in the department I was in, I worked on a small number of higher value litigated cases. And so just whether we were bass fishing at Lake Allen Henry or duck hunting or goose hunting at one of the many playa lakes around Lubbock, we just were always talking about, man, we'd be the perfect business partners with your background in high volume claims and my background in higher value litigation. It just seemed like a natural fit. And so, man, I loved dreaming about what could be with you during all those sunrises and sunsets over the water.
Oh, yeah.
It was a great time.
It was a great time. I know you would call me. I had to study hard for law school. I wasn't a good test taker. And you only get one test per class.
That's something people don't know about law school.
That was the hard part.
One grade,
one test. It's a final. That's it. You gotta retain all the information throughout the semester, and then boom, you go in, you take your test, and
it is what it is. One shot.
It's not really pass fail. I mean, it is pass fail, but I mean, you get a grade.
That's right.
It's part of your ranking in school. But yeah, so I had to study pretty hard, and Jonathan would call me up. Hey, let's go hunting, let's go fishing. I mean, I can't say no to that.
No, of course.
So, but it was a good influence, not a bad influence, and we had some great times. Yeah, we talked about business and just this dream of hey, let's do this. And at the time, I don't think either one of us really had an entrepreneurial bent to us. It was just, well, I know we both had our own little ways of making money,
Yeah,
so
I
guess we did, but at the same time, we didn't
recognize it.
Yeah, we were just talking about practicing law.
That's right.
Practicing law, not necessarily being in the business of law. We wanted to practice law together. We thought we could do that well together. And so when the opportunity arose, we did that, and that was that. Well, maybe. That's probably a better story to tell later, but just that's how Jonathan and I met.
That's right,
and that's how we got started.
Yeah, how we became fast friends over shotgun shells and duck decoys and bass fishing in Lubbock, Texas. It was that was a great time of life.
That was a good time. That was a good time.
And I'll tell you this, Danny. To this day, we still do a lot of that. Not enough, but we bass fished earlier this week. We get to go duck hunting and red fishing down in Rockport. And, man, I still treasure my sunrises and sunsets over the water with you, buddy.
Oh, yeah, me too,
Fun
man.
stuff.
We had a blast the other day. Anytime you can enjoy the outdoors, it's good. And we'll end with this. I mean, I think, having a lot of people may have their own business, or maybe they're in practice for themselves, and maybe they're solo, but maybe they have partners, right? I mean, I don't know. You have to make that choice early on. For us, at least for me, I knew right off the bat, like I don't really want to do this on my own. I would have if I had to, right? I mean, that's part of our story. You weren't prepared at the time that I was kind of in a position where I needed to open the practice.
Yeah,
but
30 minutes later, I was prepared.
Yeah. Jonathan told me no. I called him. I said, hey, let's do this, man. Let's roll. And he says, oh, man, I'm making some good money over here. And, you were just not in a position to move yourself to the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Yeah, it's too much risk at that time.
Yeah. So, but Julianne and I, we were in a position where we wanted to do this. We were going to start a family, and it was that time was right now. And I remember going, oh, Julianne, he's just got other stuff going on, but we were going to do it anyway. Right.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yeah, you're right. It was like 30 minutes later, you called me back and you said,
now I'm ready.
Yeah, let's do this. All right, let's go. So that was a big relief. And we've been going strong ever since. And so, I always look back and think, man, this would be really difficult to do solo.
I just don't imagine how. I mean, if you're solo out there, man, hats off to you. You're on the verge of insanity. I would imagine.
That's right. I encourage anybody that are willing to go do it.
Sure.
And everybody's made different. We had different skill sets that I think complemented each other and has been good for the business. And we've been able to, I think one of the things that's been huge is, well, first of all, we've always been 50-50.
That's right.
I mean, for the longest, sometimes we were working cases together and sometimes you'd make more money.
That's
on
right.
cases. Sometimes I'd make more money on cases, but we always split it 50-50. It wasn't how much time are you spending, how much time are you spending, or how much money are you making, how much money are you making. It's just, hey, we agreed at the very beginning it was 50-50.
No, man, it was never a competition. It was in this race. It's always been tag team.
Yeah,
always.
How can we do it together to get the best result for the clients? And we also had at that early stage, because of our background at mine at the high volume firm and yours at the litigation firm, we had this vision of casting a wide net to bring in a ton of cases like these big time law firms do.
That's right.
But also hammer the big cases, which was not really that common for law firms. They were either
it still isn't. I mean,
that's right. It's still, there are a few that I truly respect. They're able to handle a high volume of cases, but they're good litigators.
That's right.
And that's what we've always strived to be, and I feel like we're on the verge of that.
That's right. We're on the
verge. I mean,
that's right.
You and Chris Carver did get a $48 million verdict recently. So I mean,
41 million.
Oh, 41
yeah,
million. My bad.
It'll be 60 in a couple of years.
Yeah, right.
And
interest is growing, right?
That's right.
But yeah, I think we've gotten to that point where 24 years later, we're on the verge of that.
That's right.
We're constantly working to be able to handle a high volume of cases, but hammer the big ones. But we also had a part two of that original vision, which was to surround ourselves with high-performing individuals that inspire us and each other to be our best every single day. And that was the foundation of the culture that we have today at Daniel Stark.
Just that no drama mentality, both of us having worked in law firms where drama was an everyday part of the culture.
Yeah.
And just knowing that that's not an environment that's conducive to excellence. And so, it was important to us then, and it's important to us now to have a culture of high performers that are inspiring.
Ordinary people getting extraordinary results, because we're just ordinary guys that have been blessed to be in this business and have gotten to a point where we can get extraordinary results for our clients. And we know a lot of people that are doing the same. Ordinary people getting extraordinary results. And then two, what's the foundation of the firm? How do we start it? And those two things, that original vision exists today. We talk about it at every planning meeting with our team about casting a wide net, bringing in a lot of cases, but hammering the big ones, and then surrounding ourselves with high-performing people that inspire us. So that's what this is, y'all. On the Verge, podcast number 1. Thanks for listening.